So I wanted to make a little video on horse archery saddles and positioning, as well as a little bit about the target positioning. Because I've seen a lot of riders out there right now, practicing in winter, which is amazing. A lot of people are out there practicing, a lot of them in arenas. We also practice in my arena here a lot. And usually arenas means we end up having to practice with low targets, which can cause a lot of problems for our form and technique and our horsemanship. So while we do it here, this is one of the many reasons why I personally practice the Kashai track, because of the angle of the target allows us to have good riding position, good posture, and good posture for our archery. Being up high, not trying to get something low. Especially for the beginner, I like to start them up on targets that are up high, so they're not having to tip off the side of the horse. You can tip successfully, but it's very difficult for beginners. The other thing about that too is, the way people are riding on their circles in the track, you get a lot of people, leaning off the sides of their horses like this. See if I can get him straight so you can see. And no matter what you're shooting at, you never want your feet to go off kilter. You really want to try to have your feet balanced and even, especially when on a circle, because if you lean, all your horse has to do is slip or sidestep and you're going to get dumped off. And then alternatively too, for the forward and back shots, sometimes we get people that are leaning very heavily on one side or the other. Now, the masters in the valley, if you see a straight on photo or video of them from a forward shot or a back shot, you'll see that their feet are very rarely unbalanced. If they're unbalanced, it's just slightly, compared to a lot of other people who practice, who sometimes have like a 6 to 8 inch difference in their stirrups. So one of the ways that we can counter this is because the Kashai target is so much higher, and you also have to rise off of your horse. You'll never be successful at those long distance forward and back shots sitting on your horse. Hang on, buddy, I'm making a video. Especially if you're seated. For one, the more you rotate, the more you're cueing your horse to actually turn when you are hoping to have them straight on the track. And so the way that we teach it here is that you ride your lower leg straight, you hold that horse straight, you stay balanced in both stirrups. Your body is riding the horse straight while you rise above the saddle to get your twist. Hang on, bud. Yeah, you can go play outside at Becca's. So we do a lot of focusing on getting ourselves twisted up here, rising up above the saddle. But in order to do that, you also have to have a saddle that you're not physically fighting against. You won't progress very far, and it can be very frustrating trying to shoot long distance forward and back shots in a saddle that don't provide you that stability. So this video is to help people see a couple of my archery saddles and what I recommend for archery saddles. The alignment that you really want is to be able, big goober, okay, is to be able to have quite a bend. I say it's very similar to a jumper's leg. And there are a lot of people that describe this differently. But when shooting, I always rise. If I'm on, say, a hunt track, I will sit to make connection with my horse, to find my balance around corners, things like that, and then I will always rise to shoot. Any twisting and turning while shooting will be while risen. And the way that I achieve that is having saddles that allow for me to do that. So this one is made by Dana Hawco. This is my favorite horse archery saddle. All of my horses love this saddle. I recently had to redo some of the padding because I've worn it so much. And the beauty of all of my archery saddles is generally the stirrups hang fairly center so that you can rise up above the saddle. You don't have to be rising. No, we're not standing. This is a problem that a lot of people have too. They think, oh, I'm going to stand in the stirrups. No, you're not standing in the stirrups. You're rising. It doesn't even have to be that much. It just has to be enough so that your legs can balance you and keep you hovering up above that horse for your archer platform. Now, these ones, depending on competition, depending on the size of the horse, the girth of the horse, I might raise or lengthen them. He's kind of narrow, so I do keep them just a little longer to keep me more stable on him. But the goal is to have something like this. Now, a lot of people have saddles with these tall pommels here. for archery, I want to encourage people to use these because they do keep you from tipping forward. They help remind you to sit up, but these are not for leaning on. So a lot of people make the mistake or the assumption that these are to lean on, especially when they go to do the back shot and they kind of push their pelvis into it. This is not what I recommend at all, because then you're just putting a lot of pressure on the forehand of that saddle, which is very uncomfortable for the horse. So again, these are for rising, not sitting. Hang on, buddy. Also, not leaning. This one has a lower cantle here, but I'm gonna get a couple other saddles out to show you guys the differences in the pommel and the cantle and how they're all meant for riding. But what I really like them for more than anything is that reminder to not get caught in this position, you know, where we're forward. One of those things that can happen too is then your leg comes back, just like in jumping or anything else with a short stirrup. So rising, twisting, I will come over here.
Mama, see the kitty.
You see the kitty? Where is that kitty?
She was so hungry.
Oh, okay, hang on, honey. Okay, so I'll just do 3 forward, 3 back. And then I will bring out just a couple of my other saddles, just to show a little bit different sitting position so you can see what I recommend. Come on, buddy.
Mommy, I'm just going to get my running shoes.
Okay,
Inside.
there we go.
That's my running shoes.
This target's definitely closer than we'd be on the track, but hopefully you can see my lower body, come on, bud, and my upper body. So through here, you will rotate your upper body. But these higher targets allow us to have good form and technique. We can sit up, we can rise and stand. Good boy. We'll do a back shot. See the other side. Boy. And I'm still battling habits. I had many years of bad habits and bad muscle memory. The last one I felt it from many years of poor form and poor technique. Riding very fast. And I could shoot bullseyes off a galloping horse. And you know, and I won stuff for it. But at the same time, I had such poor archery form that I actually destroyed this shoulder. And you know, and I was started off well, and then I started competing internationally, and everybody was kind of doing the same thing, and so I shot more and more like those I was training with and competing with, and we all ended up, you know, hunched because we're on these galloping horses first of all, and they're not controlled, and you're shooting at targets that are low, and one of the things that does then is if you're fast and you're hunched, and then you're here, and then all of a sudden you're tipped. Let me turn him. All of a sudden, you know, we're kind of hunched over here and we're tipped and legs swing all over and we don't have our stability. And, you know, you can still catch the timing and you could still hit a bullseye. That doesn't mean that you did it well. Doesn't mean that you did it well for you, especially not your horse if you're running out of control. And it doesn't give you longevity in your shooting, as I've discovered. And I was also shooting high poundage bows. Not that that's a problem. If you're shooting high poundage bows, this is just more reason to do it well and make sure that you're really pulling through your back and that you have your chest lifted so that you can do that, so that you don't get stuck in these situations here. This is also something I'm seeing a lot of people cantering around their corners in their arena, you know, and they have a target here on the ground and they're coming and they're getting heavy and they're just kind of going pluff, you know, and then sitting back up in their horse and then they're tipping down to get this thing, and that's not good for you or your horse or your balance, especially then if you want to teach your horse to ride straight on a track. So you have to really focus on even if I was shooting at a target down here, I wouldn't lean off the side of the horse. Instead, I would stand up, rise, and tip in place, but that means that I'm using my weight to compensate my tip to keep my stirrups balanced on the horse so that I'm up here, pointed down, although I hate this angle, especially on a 16-hand horse, it's hard, but you're gonna stand and tip as opposed to, you know, there are people that are still standing, but a lot of them are leaning off the side like this, or they're sitting and leaning off the side, which is different. I know, buddy, sorry. Good boy. Different from rising enough that then you can tip with your weight out in your hip using your stirrups balanced. Okay, I will go grab a couple saddles. A couple more. Much shorter horse, different saddle. This is actually one of Daniel's saddles, and it's very similar to Kashai's saddles in the valley, except for it's a little bit more modern tree. Still, I would do, but you know, for both of those, I would do the tree shape a little differently if I could make my own saddles. But this one I've been able to get to fit a couple of my horses. So again, this one now similar to Kashai's saddles, much higher pommel and cantle, and you know, they're not, a lot of these saddles are not necessarily designed for a lot of sitting and riding, much more designed for standing. And this one, again, you know, you have the stability to catch you, and it will catch you from leaning if you need to. Again, I still do not recommend on leaning on them purposefully. You know, you can touch them, but don't bear all of your weight on them. And again, that will also just give you a rougher ride, because then you're using less of your legs and you're connecting more of your body to the saddle, which will make it then go with the horse, but not above the horse where you want to be stable. So, but I do like the stirrup position on this saddle, and I like that I can still reach all the way forward and back. You know, you'll see I'll end up pushing just a little bit on this ridge here. The saddle I was in before was more triangular in front. This one is more round. So you can still, though, use this one to kind of block your knee here, which is nice, to get your position. Kind of hard to do while not cantering. So anyways, this is another good example of, you know, shoulder, hip, and heel. That stirrup aligned in the middle, so that you can have quite a bit of bend in your knee and use your platform to rise. Hey, stop. My children. Okay. Yeah, like that one. So this is also just another very much made for archery saddle. Now I'm going to get two other saddles that are not necessarily originally designed with archery intentions, but are pretty good for archery. Okay, this one's a McClellan Cavalry saddle. This one's a replica, and they're hard to find in gullets that fit modern day horses. Similar to a lot of other saddles, you know, it's hard to find, like you won't really find one of these that typically fits many. This one is a replica that I lucked out on that is wide. I also have a replica that's rather narrow. Most of them are narrow. Also, you know, made very much like the archery saddles. Not that they necessarily intended them for archery, but for cavalry. And very simple. Most of them do not come with this. You know, this is actually, you know, a McClellan tree. Also allows for standing up, rotating, balancing, rising, very free to move around in. The rigging, normally when you find these, is like this. A V-shape rigging, which is nice because you can adjust it to fit different horses. You know, for him it's longer in the back and shorter in the front, but some horses you might need it to have a more center-line rigging or something. The stirrups are still at a pretty good angle, generally falling here kind of just behind the girth. And my friend Zoltan put this lovely cover on top for me so that it would protect our legs. Usually they come bare with that rigging right there, and that'll chafe your legs. It's really annoying. Especially these, whoever did the rigging on this one did some really big buckles. But with this handy dandy leather flap that goes over the top, it protects our legs from it, makes it much more comfortable. So, like I said, it's a modern made saddle, very usable for archery, hard to find for various horse body types. And you will have to modify some things to make it nice and comfy for archery. Yeah,
Can I have some graham crackers?
you have to wait. Okay, just cut me talking to my son. Anyways, yep, so and then they don't have any padding underneath them. So usually, actually when I use these, I have a secondary, just little pad, little pony pad that I keep underneath them. I couldn't find it, it's probably in the trailer. But you have to pad them out quite a bit because they don't come with any of their own padding on the inside. And I think that's that about that. So here's, this one's actually a Brazilian saddle. I used to own one of these. This one belongs to Ashley. And it's also very similar to my Abeta endurance saddle. So if I take my leg out, you can see, you know, the stirrup actually hangs down, you know, behind the girth, actually pretty center. And some of the Abeta endurance saddles are like that. These are kind of nice, you know, because they're pretty open. They have more of the Western style fender, if that's what you're used to. But because the stirrups, again, are underneath, you can still rise. You know, if you sit, you can have that shoulder, hip, and heel, and you can have that leg back, but not on the horse, and you can squeeze. That still allows you a lot of movement up here in the saddle to rotate, and you're not fighting the saddle. And so saddles that I would not use for archery, because I end up fighting the saddles, are Western saddles with the fenders forward. No, what are you doing, Minna? She's in season and she wants to get back to her her boyfriend. No. So a lot of Western style fenders are placed more up here and put the rider in a chair position. And so, then for them to try to, you know, then they usually end up just sitting back here and shooting. Which again, you know, if you want to be successful in those long distance forward or back shots, you'll get hitched up here, or you'll end up rotating your whole body, you know, while sitting down, which again is cueing your horse poorly, because then you're not asking your horse to go straight. So, and then if you try to rise and if your fenders are stuck up here, I'll see if I can pretend like they're stuck. So if they're stuck up here, kind of up by the girth or up in front of the girth, and you want to get out of the saddle, then you're fighting gravity, and then usually you end up tipped forward like this because you are having to work against your legs and trying to meet your legs up above the saddle. Generally there's a horn or something else, but usually you end up in this kind of overbent position, whereas if your legs are underneath you, you can rise and have your upper body upright. Let's scooch over. So the other saddles that I do recommend, you know, things like this, endurance saddles, Abeta. There's also the Pandora. Pandora endurance saddles are very similar to a modern day McClellan, very nicely made for endurance. And the Specialized saddles are also a little bit of a combination between a McClellan and an endurance saddle. Their paneling system can be very difficult to fit specific horsebacks. As well as tuckers. Tuckers can be very comfortable for archery. Some of them can be aligned correctly, similar to the Specialized, but both of those I find to be tippy, which is one of the reasons why I don't really own them yet, either the Specialized or the tucker. One, because I don't like the paneling system personally for my horses, and then two, any of the ones that I've ridden in, I've felt like once I'm up, the saddle frame sits higher off of their back. And I feel like if I try to depend on that saddle for anything, if I need to in an emergency, that it's tippy up there. But that depends a lot on the horse and how well the saddle fits their back. So in the beginning, you want to first train your horses in your equipment that you're used to. But if you want to seriously become more adept at your archery and your archer's platform and riding, then you really need to find a saddle that doesn't hinder you in that. So all of the saddles that I kind of went down in order from my favorite to least favorite, but all saddles that I accept and use here for archery, because they do allow a proper position and help you rise with good position, upper body, being able to rise from the saddle. The other one that I don't like, I should have said, is jumping saddles. Jumping saddles, they allow for a short stirrup, but typically they have, have your knees up higher. And when you try to rise in that jump saddle, typically people will end up rising again up here, which makes things, trying to turn becomes difficult if you're stuck in this position forward, where, you can really rotate this, draw shoulder back if you can rise and turn your whole chest. I'm going to beat that again and again and again. Okay.